Hi, I'm Eileen Bild. I'm with Hotel Talk, and I'm thrilled today to have Dr. Bernie Siegel with us to interview for the book Crappy to Happy. So, Dr. Bernie Siegel, he prefers to be called Bernie, so I will call you Bernie throughout the interview. He's a best-selling author, retired from practice as an assistant clinical professor of surgery at Yale, of general and pediatric surgery in 1989, to speak to patients and their caregivers. He's touched many lives all over the world. In 1978, Bernie began to talk about patient empowerment and the choice to live fully and to be able to die in peace. So, Bernie, you assist in breaking ground in the field of healing and personally struggling to live the message of kindness and love. And you have this quote that I just love, and I think I want to go into the beginning of the interview with this quote. Death is not a period, but a comma in the story of life. So, how do you explain that to people? Tell me more about that.
Well, first, just like the title Crappy to Happy, so many people I thought were dead, I met speaking, and you're out lecturing, and you look at the audience and, oh my God, there's one of my patients. See? And just to give you a classical one that I wrote about in one of my books, this was a landscaper, and he had cancer of the stomach. After surgery, I said, you need more treatment. He said, you forgot something. What I forget? It's springtime. Gotta go home, make the world beautiful. So when I die, I leave a beautiful world.
Oh.
He wasn't interested in not dying, just making the world beautiful. 6 years later, my nurse handed me his chart. I said, he's dead. He's never come back. You must have two people with the same name, And she said, open the door. So I opened the door to the examining room, and there sat John. I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business.
Oh, wow.
He became my therapist. He lived to 91. I spoke at he and his wife's 70th anniversary to tell people what a wonderful man he was and what he taught me. And he made the world a beautiful place for me. Because if you took a walk with him, he would point out things you see that people would say, oh, that's a weed. But if there was a little flower on it, that's what John was seeing, the color. And he made me see the world differently. And even that is an ages old practice, something called hispodedus, Hisbodedus. You walk with God in nature. See? And that's what really John helped create. You take a walk in the morning, or it didn't matter what time, but you feel God in creation and nature. And that's, dog for me is like an excuse for that meditation. We go for a walk in the morning, but I'm with God as we walk around and look at the beautiful sky. And again, I'm also an artist. And one of the things I always question is, you see, colors have meaning. It's like a red light means stop and a green is go, okay? But how did God decide to make a blue sky or green leaves? But think about, what if the leaves were brown or black? You know what I mean?
That would be pretty boring and depressing.
Yeah, looking at all day. And so again, I am overwhelmed with the wonder of life and nature, and just in awe of creation. And because of that, I learned of the potential. Doctors were saying to me, you're giving people false hope. I said, what is false hope? People buy a lottery ticket. The chances of winning, 1 in several million, but some win. So there is hope, but it's not about statistics. So whether you use the word potential or hope, I would always show people what their potential was. And it's interesting, in his book, Cancer Ward, Solzhenitsyn uses a term you never hear a doctor use. See, like John, he comes back and hasn't died. They'd say, oh, maybe he had a spontaneous remission.
Mm-hmm.
But I would ask them and say, how come you didn't die when you were supposed to? And they always had a story. So I knew it related to their loving life and their body getting the message. But in his book, Cancer Ward, Solzhenitsyn says, one of the men, they were all in the hospital in the cancer ward, he says, I found this book in a medical library. It says here there are cases of self-induced healing. Not recovery through treatment, but actual healing, see? And that just jumped off the page at me, because Solzhenitsyn had cancer in his lifetime, when he was writing. And it just struck me. He uses the term self-induced. And so doctors don't learn from success. You don't die when you're supposed to, and you're lucky, or it was spontaneous, something happened. But I learned to ask patients, why didn't you die when you were supposed to? And it was always related to that living. One of the funniest, I have to tell you, was a fellow who moved to Colorado to die in the mountains, because he said it was so beautiful here. I want to die in the mountains. And I called a year later to tell the family, why did you ignore me? I told you I was going to come to the funeral. He answered the phone.
Oh, wow.
And he said, it was so beautiful here, I forgot to die.
I love that.
Those are the exact words.
Wow. Yeah. So how much longer did he live?
Oh, I mean, I didn't keep calling him. I'm sure he went on for a long time.
Yeah. So to me, that has to do with our thinking and our belief system, in that
it changes your chemistry. See, when you're enjoying life. When a student at University of South Florida, he said to his professor, I want to show that emotions change immune system, stress hormone. And his professor said, I don't think that's going to make a difference. This was years ago. But the kid persisted, and I backed him up. And the professor said, all right, go do it, for your thesis, for graduation. And sure enough, he took a male and a female actor. He gave them one dialogue script that was all comedy and humor. And then he gave them one where the man murdered her husband, and she meets him, and he drew their blood while they were reading the scripts. That's what impressed me. They're just reading a script. It's not them. And yet in the humor, their immune function went up, stress hormone levels went down. In the tragic one, the opposite. Stress hormone levels up and immune function down.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, to me, that is.
I mean, just petting a furry animal raises bonding hormones. It's just like a woman, when she picks up her newborn baby, all the hormonal changes in her to bond to that child. So I mean, I can't help but keep thinking all the stories in our life, how the bonding happens. We had a house that was what I call the zoo, because we were always rescuing animals. And not just me, I had 5 children, so they were all interested in it. So we had fences and all kinds of creatures. But the eggs, we had ducks and geese, were all hatched in the house in an incubator. And one day I realized they think our kids are their parents, because the school bus showed up, and I happened to be home at the time, and the kids all went to get on the bus, and so did the ducks and geese.
Oh, wow.
And apparently every morning they would try to get on the bus. The drivers, saw it as a joke, and they didn't get upset. And in the afternoon, who was there to greet the bus when they heard it coming up the street or saw it? The ducks and geese. And when I released some where my parents lived on a beautiful lake near their house, I got a phone call of my mother. The neighbors have a question. What is it? Why do the ducks and geese come out of the lake and walk half a mile when a school bus shows up? And I said, Ma, you're breaking my heart. They're looking for our kids.
Oh.
But it shows you how we connect and what a difference it makes.
Yeah. And the importance of not living in a place of doom and gloom, and that crappy feeling, and that the potential for having positive outcomes and positive experiences.
Right.
And defying the laws and the rules that man has set, to have happiness and joy and to live a fulfilling life. And it sounds like, with your background and in the medical community and the experiences that you've had with your patients, that there's a lot more to life. There's a lot more to living. There's a lot more to what we see that's a part of our
Yeah.
ability to live a fulfilling life.
And your body believes what your mind conceives of.
Yes.
Because even if you think of the term crappy to happy, if you're getting, say, chemotherapy, radiation, and you say, oh, this is horrible, well, one woman drew it as a devil giving me poison. Another woman drew the treatment as coming from God. And doctors at the hospital started calling my patients Siegel's crazy patient. Why? Because they had no side effects to treatment. Oh, the nurses even came to me. Your patients are a problem. What is it? They refuse pain medication after surgery. I said, did it ever occur to you they're not hurting? What are you, crazy? You cut people open and they don't hurt. But it was true. And after a while, people realized it was an affectionate term. Oh, it's one of Siegel's crazy patients. So they learned to respect what they were teaching them. And it was, as I say, if you picture in your mind everything being successful, no problems, what does your body think? That's what's going to happen. So,
Right.
It goes to the treatment and it's fine because it's been told this is fine. I won't have any troubles. And a lot of doctors used to call me because they thought the radiation machine was broken. And then they said, I saw your name in the chart and I realized it's a crazy patient. This is a quote from an oncologist friend when this woman was told by her doctor, you have 2 months to live. Don't bother to go for chemotherapy. It'll just make you feel lousy. Go enjoy your 2 months. And she was told to come see me by a nurse who was taking care of my father-in-law. And she came and I said, look, I'm not an oncologist, but I'll get one to see you because she had leukemia. So I said, it's not something I operate on. He came, he said, Bernie, I agree with her doctor. He's got about 2 months to live. But this was in his note to me. I know you and your crazy patients, so I'll give her hope. In 6 weeks, his note to me said, she's in complete remission.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, and then he wrote, isn't chemotherapy wonderful? After telling me he didn't think it was going to make any difference at all. But each note to me had those little wisecracks. Doing beautifully. Isn't chemotherapy wonderful? Yeah. And in the end, 6 weeks. And he said to her, like, why do you think all this happened? She said, oh, Dr. Siegel sat on my bed and hugged me. I knew I'd get better.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's just, when you hear stories like that, it makes you wonder why that's not being done more. Why
Well, I
that
can
connect.
tell you, I could show you a handful of magazines from 20 years ago. Interviewed Dr. Bernie Siegel, the controversial Dr. Bernie Siegel. And even the reporters who came to interview me, they gave me a hard time. It's like, you're nuts. What are you talking about? It can't be. They didn't listen to me. But I'll tell you, one reporter, I could tell when she came in the office, this is an intellectual lady who's just going to, beat me up. So I said to her, I have a couple of patients to see, then I'll sit down for the interview. Draw me a picture of yourself. Because I wanted to show her how much the mind, retains your life in you. Like saying to somebody, as I said, they draw the devil giving them poison. I'll say, then don't bother or change your attitude towards the treatment. But anyway, she drew herself with a very large head. And I thought, okay, this fits her intellectual nature and what the interview is going to be like. But hanging on behind her, like on a wall, was a big clock with one hand pointed at 12. So I thought, I got to shake her up. So instead of saying, why is 12 important to you? I said, what happened when you were 12 years old? And the look on her face was, I don't like deadlines. I said, that's not it. There's only one hand on the clock. And then she fell apart because she had been sexually abused when she was 12. And I'll tell you, that changes the interview. You know, it's like, how could he know that?
Right.
So, and then there were patients of mine when, you know, death is a comma, who said, I've learned, one of them was a mystic. I didn't know that. I'm just taking care of her. She came and she said, Bernie, I'm a mystic. We had a meeting with other mystics. I know you're not a normal doctor. So I said, let's get a message for Dr. Siegel. She came in, she said, this is from a patient of yours who died. Name is Frank. And the message was, if I'd known it was this easy, I'd have bought the package a long time ago and not have resisted so much. I called up his wife because I knew who it was. And she said, sure, I'll listen to the message. And I said it, and she let out a shriek. And I said, I told you, I don't want to upset you. You're not upsetting me. That's what Frank said every time he left your meeting. I can't buy the package. And so Monica, is the name of the mystic, has been in touch with me ever since that day.
Wow.
Bringing me messages from people who have died, that she does not know them at all. When my wife died on Friday, that's when, to me, that was a test. Sunday morning, Monica's on the phone. Bernie, a lovely woman, got in touch with me who was an opera singer. And she told me, Bobby's fine, back with the family, everything's all right. Now, Monica knows nothing, and yet the opera singer, I knew, that's my mother-in-law calling and getting in touch with Monica. So those are the kinds of things that made me a believer. And I'll add one more mystic. Well, I've had several. See, I've had the experiences, so I don't doubt things.
Right.
I was 4 years old. I almost choked to death on a toy. I had a near-death experience. I left my body. I was mad, as most kids are, that I didn't die. Because you're 4 years old, you're, you know, floating around. You can see, you can think. What do you feel bad about? Oh, my mother's going to find me. But when I talked about it, I noticed that I never said me. I always said the body, or sometimes the boy on the bed. And I thought, that's you. No, it isn't me. That's just the body. This is me, you know, my spirit. And then 50 years or so later, because I'm so busy with interviews, a woman friend called and I said, I really can't talk. I've got to do an interview. Bernie, why are you living this life? She was upset with me for how busy I was and not taking care of myself. And I said, oh my God. She said, what is it? What you said just put me in a trance. I saw myself with a sword in my hand killing. Maybe that's why I'm a surgeon, to help people with a knife. And a few months later, while flying cross country with nobody accompanying me, I went into a trance on the flight and saw my whole past life as a knight, killing people. To make a long story short, I'm not going to go into the details, but the person I killed, because I didn't have faith in what I was asked to do, was my wife in this life. I went into her bedroom to kill her in her sleep, and her dog woke her up. And she turned, and there was that face. And I cried for hours and hours. And the only way I can describe it to people, I always say, is it's like watching yourself in a movie, except it's real.
It's real.
And the reason I mentioned faith is I learned, well, I went to therapy, and James Hillman, the Jungian therapist, said to me, Bernie, you hear what you're saying? I said, what do you mean? You keep saying, my Lord asked me to kill the neighbor's daughter. He said, you keep saying, my Lord. I said, well, it's the Lord of the castle. He said, no, Bernie, it's your Lord. You need to go home and relive this. And that was like a whack in the head, because I had always questioned the faith of people like Abraham and Jesus. See, if I were them, I would have argued with God, you know, take me, leave my kid alone. Because that's what I did when I was asked to kill the neighbor's daughter. I said, why don't I kill her father? He's the problem. No, I want you to kill her daughter. Well, what if I don't? I'll kill you. Okay, I'm going. Yeah. I mean, that's actual dialogue. And if I had said, okay, I'll go, then I would have been told, no, I want you to bring them here so we can resolve this problem.
Mm.
And I can have faith in you that you'll convince them to come. And I really felt that my marrying my wife in this life healed the past because we became one family. So what they were fighting over was actually property, land. And that's our gift. Say, so now it's all one family and there's nothing to fight over.
That's a beautiful story. I want to kind of go back to when you said that you had a near-death experience and it's the body. And so you have a belief that our bodies die, and but our consciousness lives on.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about that theory. And I believe the same thing. I believe that this is just the vessel and that our consciousness, comes into the vessel and we're birthed, and then it gives us the experience, the opportunity to experience touch, smell, hearing, all the things that if we were just consciousness, we can't experience that.
Yeah, you need the body. I mean, it's like the body is your tool
Right.
with which to accomplish what you're sent here to do. But all the consciousness of, see, let me put it in this term too, because people say past lives. I don't literally mean it was me living then. What I mean is the experience of the past life is a part of me now. But it was a different guy, but I have his consciousness. And the thing that really convinces me of that is not my experience, but the children with incredible talent. And one day, one was on TV and he said, when I was 5, he was going to play violin on one of these talent shows. He said, when I was 5 years old, I saw a violin for the first time and I had to run over and grab it and hold it tight. And I thought, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. He has a violinist's consciousness in him. So 5 years old, he grabs this thing and he's playing it and has this incredible talent, you see. And people need to understand that, that it creates who we are, our talents, all kinds of things. I was always interested in art from the time I was a kid. I think that was another part of what was in me. And I painted portraits of everybody in the family and learned a lot from it, because one of the things Elizabeth Kubler-Ross said to me years ago was, Bernie, what are you covering up? I said, what are you talking about? She said, you drew a picture for me. It was an outdoor scene. And she said, you used a white crayon to make snow on a mountain. The page is already white. What do you need to add a layer for? And the other she taught me, she's the one who started me on the drawings and the dreams. Why is 11 important? I said, why do you ask that? You drew 11 trees. Oh, I've been doing this work 11 months. I mean, I immediately had an answer. I didn't have to think, oh, 11, why that? And that fascinated me. So that's why I went back to the hospital with crayons and started getting patients to draw. And because I didn't know anything, it was like self-learning, from what patients drew, which included anatomy. I mean, they drew parts of their body. I knew what they were drawing because I know anatomy.
Right.
They didn't see it as, their, well, even a boat with sails. When I show it to people, say, what do those look like? Oh, her breasts. You know what I mean? So it's all these symbols that showed what was going on in the person's body, what they were worried about, etc. And so I paid attention to my own dreams and got all the patients to do drawings. And again, what went from crazy Siegel, hey, that's interesting.
Right. Well,
let me give you one example, because one of the anesthesiologists, he made a coloring book, because I did a lot of children's surgery, as you mentioned, for the kids when they came to the operating room, because he was learning too. The kids are telling us about what's going to happen, their experience, any things we need to be afraid of or not. So he gave them this book, and at the bottom it tells them what the page is about. One of them was, you meet someone known as an anesthesiologist. He's wearing an outfit that looks like green pajamas. Well, this kid takes a red crayon and draws the anesthesiologist.
Hmm.
So I showed that to the anesthesiologist. He said, Bernie, yeah, it worries me too. His mother has muscular dystrophy. If he has an abnormal gene like she does, he could have an adverse reaction to muscle relaxants and be even life-threatening. So I said, then look on the last page. If he draws himself purple, a spiritual color, I'm canceling the operation and sending him home because he's
Right.
telling me I'm going to die. Well, the last page shows him with, black and red. I'm not happy. I'm hurting. So I
Right.
said, okay, we can go ahead. That's a normal reaction from a kid to have spots of black and red on him. And also, it was interesting. The last page said, your parents will be waiting to take you home, but the only person in the drawing is the mother.
Hmm.
See, that was the truth. Who's waiting for you when your operation's over? Your mother. Where's daddy? In the office working. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you definitely have a way of connecting yourself to, that higher consciousness or another part of life that speaks to us, but we don't listen.
I keep, you keep connecting me with things because in college, I got a C in creative writing.
Oh,
Only
wow.
one C in 4 years. So I
Wow.
didn't graduate summa cum laude because of that C.
Oh.
And my sense of humor, I even wrote to the college after I had bestsellers and said, hey, raise me to a B and I'll be, high
I'll be
honors.
happy.
And they wrote they had no sense of humor. They didn't write back laughing. They wrote back, we cannot alter your grades after you graduate. So I gave up on them. But what I realized, Mario Puzo, Godfather author, was a friend of mine. And he said, I'm going in the office to write. I can't be with you all now. And you look in the office and he's sitting there. And so his girlfriend said to him, Mario, why are you sitting there? You're not doing anything. He said, I'm waiting for the characters to tell me what to write. And that really taught me a lot in terms of, I was thinking in college and my writing was lousy. But when I learned to write a letter, to everyone or let the characters become me, and they are now. Now, when I read what I've written, I get a kick out of it because all of these people are me, different parts of me saying different things.
Right. Well, I believe that musicians and writers, anything creative, it comes through us versus from us. When we open ourselves up to allow, that connection to happen. And I'm thinking that you believe in journaling and that through the
Oh,
journaling.
yes. I was going to bring that up to you because there are 4 books recently. One, of Crappy to Happy. And it's like taking fertilizer and use it to grow a plant. Okay?
Mhm.
And so when you are redirected by these things, they like say, what am I experiencing? And what words? Because this is a specific example, okay? You have cancer. I say, what are you going through? Failure. How does failure fit your life? Well, my body failed. That's not my question. Oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a child. I must have been a failure as a child. That changes her life and her attitude. And another woman was going to be admitted to the hospital with severe migraine headaches. What does it feel like? Pressure. So I did a meditation with her to relieve pressure because she was in such pain and I was in the emergency room. I just wanted to help her. 15 minutes later, the nurse came over to me and said, the pressure is her marriage. Her headache's gone. She's going home to work on her marriage. You see? So those are things where you can turn, the crap into fertilizer and help change your life. And the latest 3 books I have, one, I think we already mentioned, 3 Men, 6 Lives, the past lives. And those 3 men, they're all me, if you know what I mean. It's a
Mhm.
mafia don, a psychiatrist, and a surgeon. And my past life, the surgeon experiences. The other two have their things happen. So let's, as an example, let's say the psychiatrist leads to some horrible things happening in his past life. So he wants to help people now in this life. Instead of causing people to die or commit suicide or do things, let me help them. And so there's a reason why we are who we are. And the other one is called, well, no, there are two others. And no endings, only beginnings. And the subtitle, so you know, and I'll save you trouble, a doctor's notes on living, loving, and learning who you are.
Mm.
My personal feeling is it's like a Bible too. You know, you read these 3, 4 pages, 5 pages, and each one's focused on something in your life. So I keep rereading what I've written, believe me, because I keep learning from myself to really get it to sink in. And the last book, I was asking our a grandson to help me with no endings, only beginnings. And I put something he wrote in it to start it. Because I learned that he had written a whole bunch of poetry, and I had too, but he's only 30. And so he wrote the poetry that I wrote when I was 60, when he was 30. I mean, he's so enlightened. His name is Charlie Siegel. And the book is When You Realize How Perfect Everything Is, a conversation about life between grandfather and grandson. Now, the conversation are poems. It's amazing how many had the same titles or like. And when you were saying, yes, we all ought to write poetry and keep a journal. And then a book, I think from about 14 years ago, 365 Prescriptions for the Soul.
Oh, I like that.
Daily messages of inspiration, hope, and love. I haven't stopped reading that because, you know, a year goes by, you don't remember what happened last August 3rd. But if it was meaningful, when I read that the next year, it's like, oh yeah, thank you. And that's when it really impacted on me, some of the stories in there, because I think everybody ought to read that book every day. One that I had completely forgotten, because I'm always preaching love.
Right.
Be a love warrior. You don't know what to do with people, say I love you. And I know the power of it, and had written things in there that I had totally forgotten until I started to reread the book. And one was, well, there are multiple violent people. And one was in a car behind me, screaming, cursing, and the cop wouldn't go over to his car and do anything. I couldn't believe it. That the cop said, that's not my job to get him to stop yelling. So I went over with our kids worried that he had a gun. I walked up to her car. It was in the summertime. His window was down. And I said, I'd like you to know something. I love you. I'm sorry your parents don't.
Interesting.
He stopped screaming, made a U-turn, and drove away. He became totally different in that moment. And my prayer is he went home to talk to his parents, you know? And other times on the streets too. Fortunately, lately I haven't run into many crazy people on the street. But, you know, when they're screaming and yelling, you don't know what they got in their pocketbook or their bag or what. I go over and say, I don't know what's happening in your life, but I want you to know I'm sorry for your troubles and that I love you.
Powerful words. They really are.
And they know I mean it. They've always stopped yelling and walked away. And the people on the street always come over to me and, oh my God, I've learned something from you. Oh my God, thank you. And the world is based on that love. I mean it. The kids who grow up and kill, you know, torture, do all these horrible things that we read about in the newspaper, they did not grow up with love.
Right. Right. And I'm sure, you know, going back to what's in the crappy to happy about, you know, that aspect of love when we come to the end of our life and that comma, what we look back on, it's almost like that love comes full circle. you know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've seen a lot of your patients. Yes. You
Let
want,
me, I mean, because you make me, my memories come back up. A young lady sitting in the office with me, and she said, "You're my CD." I said, "What the hell are you talking about? I'm a CD. You're my chosen dad." She
mm,
was suicidal, but she knew I loved her and cared about her. So I tell people now, be a CM or a CD. Let people know you love them. And I didn't say you have to like what they're doing, because we had 5 kids. They would say to me, "Are you getting a divorce?" I said, "What are you talking about? You yell a lot." "Yeah, because you're driving me crazy. So I yell when I don't like what's going on, but I love you and your mother. I'm not going to get a divorce." But they had to learn that there's a difference between liking and loving.
right, right.
So there had to be some discipline, some behavior that was appropriate. But because she said to me, "You're my CD," I started doing that with multiple people. And it's made an enormous impact on lives. I mean, there are people alive today because years ago, before answering machines, well, I shouldn't say before answering machines, before the emails and everything, I got a message on my answering machine, and it said, "I want to commit suicide. Do you have Jack Kevorkian's phone number? I've been sexually abused by my father. I have a brain tumor. I want to be dead. Please, do you have his number?" And I called her. I said, "Becky, I don't have his number, but I don't want you to commit suicide. I love you. You're a beautiful person. I'll be your father." And I get so many wonderful cards from her today. This
Mm.
is God knows how many years, 20 years or more. Um, and one I got a big kick out of. It said, "You're my BD, a bonus dad."
Oh, that's nice. That's
And
nice.
it was an actual card that had been printed. You know what I mean? And she found it.
Right.
So I get so many cards from her, and we've met. But that's such a gift to me that she's alive and enjoying life because somebody said, "I love you and I'll be your father." He had abused her too. You see, in her drawing, she drew a tree and there's a big black knothole in the trunk. And I knew how old she was, and I measured it, and I knew the years that was. And she said, "Yeah, those are years my father sexually abused me."
Mm.
So it's amazing how, again, it all is stored in us and shows up in dreams and drawings. Um, and that's the language God speaks too, dreams and symbols. So when you're having your dreams, yeah, your brain is turned off, you know what I mean? And the consciousness can present itself with no interference. And the same thing was true when people were anesthetized. I talked to them all the time and gave them all kinds of positive messages, and everybody thought I was ridiculous and what the hell difference does it make there? And they'd
Like,
wake up and be able to tell you what they heard in the operating room.
yeah.
Yeah. And one, oh boy, the ultimate climate, I should say, of me being crazy, fellow's heart stopped during surgery. The anesthesiologist said, "I can't get it going again, Bernie. I'm going to tell them to get the stretcher, take him to the morgue, his body." So at that point, I yelled out loud in the operating room, "Charlie, it's not your time yet. Come on back." And his heart started beating again.
Wow. You called him
And
back.
he recovered completely. And what I loved most of all was the anesthesiologist saying to me, "Bernie, I love working with you."
I'm
But no,
sure.
I didn't mind being an idiot, if you know what I mean. Acting
Well,
like a kid and doing these crazy things, because if it worked, hey, we're learning something.
it works, right? And
Yeah,
it's
I
okay
figured
to be
all the
different.
things I'd learned from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and others. Hey, if his body's hanging around, I mean, his spirit is hanging around, maybe I can get through to it.
Yeah, right, right. Well, I think it's okay to be different because sometimes being different is what makes a difference. And, you know,
Yeah,
telling people you love them through an unconditional love energy makes a world of difference. Or just having a touch or a smile and not judging. It sounds like
see,
everything you do, you're not doing any kind of judgment. you're doing it because you feel it's what's
Right.
needed or what's the right thing to do.
Well, you use the word feel. That's it. It feels right. I
Yeah.
used to hear that from my mother all the time. Do what makes you happy. So I
Right.
learned as a kid to pay attention to what made me happy, and feelings that make decisions. But you just said something else also before that struck me in the last few sentences you talked about. You remember what you?
No judgment, unconditional love, a smile, a touch. Um, I don't know what else they said.
All right,
It'll
maybe it'll
come
come
back to
to me
you.
again, but
It'll
it's
come
just
back to
another
you.
story. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I
But
think that it's again, not judging in a sense, but following your heart. That's one young lady who didn't die when she was supposed to put a note on her refrigerator. Let your heart make up your mind. And so again, your body gets a very different message when you're following it and doing what makes you happy versus what you think you should do. Yeah. And the other, that many well-known spiritual leaders, because I was always interested in what their parents told them. I heard three things: do what makes you happy. God is redirecting you. Something good will come of this when something went wrong. And that drove me out of my freaking mind as a kid. I'm looking for my parents to help me, and I get that crazy statement that God is redirecting you. Um, I mean it. Imagine if you're 7 or 10 years old and you come home from school with a horrible day, and God is redirecting you. Ma, I need help. But I talked to God a lot. And my father's father died when he was a child, and he said it taught him what was important about life because they had a hell of a time surviving. He died of tuberculosis with no money, no insurance. But my father was always helping other people live because he realized what it was like to be in that situation. And one of the most important things, because I was feeling guilty getting married when I was in college, him paying the rent, paying tuition, all those things. And I said to him, I feel guilty. Why? Because I keep asking you for things. He said, if I don't want to give it to you, I'll say no. That's the kind of simple, wonderful messages I got from my parents. So I didn't have to have guilt. I could say, could you do this for me? Could you do that for me? I got time for one more funny story because I met my wife because we were both working as counselors at a camp, my future wife. And it was no coincidence that we were both taking care of first grade boys and girls and came together. And even our first date was an accident because I was talking about how nice the pool was to come to at night. They left it open if it was a hot night. And my future wife said, are you asking me for a date? Which I wasn't. I was just saying it's nice that we could come here at night. But as soon as she said, are you asking me? Yes, because she was so pretty. I never thought she'd go out with me. Truthfully, I never would have asked her for a date,
it was
because
meant
how
to be.
pretty she
It
was.
was meant to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. That's why I say it was no coincidence. Um, Now, what was I going to tell you? You
Well,
see my mind.
that's okay. You were talking about um, the way that you met, and it wasn't an accident with your wife, and you were counselors, and it wasn't an accident that you were
Oh,
both.
I remember now.
Okay.
Yeah. I told my father I'd like to have a car so I could come home from college in upstate New York, to be with the family and to be with the young lady I loved. And he told me he was in his office writing me a letter saying, no, I'm not going to get you a car. It's upstate New York, snow, blah, blah, it could be dangerous. I don't want you driving for hours. And he said a man came into the office while he was writing and said, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. He said, it's all right. It's just a letter to my son. Oh, yeah? What's it about? Oh, he wants a car at college, but I'm not going to let him have one. And the guy said, oh, he's doing poorly in his grades. No, he gets all A's. He has a drinking problem. No. Drugs. No. No matter what the guy said, my father said no. And finally, the guy said, then why can't he have a car? And my father said I tore up the old letter and wrote, okay, you can have a car.
Well, you can thank him. You can
But you
thank
see,
him.
again, no coincidence. How did that guy walk into the office at that moment? It's quite amazing. I had a flat tire the other day and I needed help. Guy pulls up, says, hey, I'm one of your neighbors. I just moved into our street and he's helping me. You know what I mean? And it's, why was he at the, I was coming out of the town dump. And why was he at the dump at that time? You know what I mean? It's
Right,
like, if he wasn't there, nobody would have been there to help me. And
right.
those are the things that just amaze me time after time, how the coincidences happen. But there, as Elizabeth would always say, Boroni, there are no coincidences.
No, and it's
You
that.
said it, your future's unconsciously prepared long in advance. So that's why they come out in dreams and drawings, because that's where they're known, not in your consciousness, but in the unconscious.
And it's all blocked when we're conscious. So um, I have to say, Bernie, this has been an amazing, awesome interview. And thank you so much for sharing your stories and your philosophies. And um, I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from what you talked about today.
Thank you.
Do you have any last like words of
Yes, I
wisdom
was going to
you'd
ask
like
you,
to
but let me
say?
tell you one more, because like that book, No Beginnings, No Endings, it's full of these stories, and this is one I love. My wife used to make lunch for me when I, went to do surgery, because the day you never knew what was going to happen. So if I had it with me, I had something to eat. And it's like a red, lunch pail, but the word love is all over it.
Mm,
And she would always put a love note in it. So when I had opened it, the note had a picture of all our kids, our pets, and X's and O's, hugs and kisses. One day, I had a horrendous day. I mean, there were more emergencies and more disasters happening, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I mean, I was exhausted. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, things finally quieted down. I thought, oh, I got to find my lunch. And I found my pail and I sat down to eat my lunch. I opened it and the note was blank except for two words: hold on.
mm.
I thought, holy shit, how did she know what was going to happen today and wrote that note? So I pulled myself together. I mean, it made such a difference. Then I get home that night and I said, thank you. She said, what are you talking about? I said, I had a horrible day. I don't know how you knew that was going to happen, but your note got me to survive. What note? Hold on. She said, honey, it was a big sandwich with a lot of vegetables. I just wanted you to hold on. So I love finishing some books with hold on.
All right. Well, thank you, Bernie. That was
Okay, dear.
amazing. And it's been a blessing to have you on the show today.
Love your smile. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And we will do this again.
All right.